All this week, 5 on Your Side has been showing you what it's like to own and drive an electric vehicle. How they drive, how they charge, how Tesla is a bit different than the others. We talk to people who love their EVs and others who are a bit skeptical or even fearful of what this movement might do for their livelihood. Tonight, Keely Arthur and I go in depth. EVs in NC.
All right. Driving an EV takes some getting used to.
It says hold. Oh, it's so weird not having the stick.
Charging takes anywhere from minutes to hours and can be unpredictable.
We got an alert on the app telling us that the city of Wilmington was actually slowing down energy speeds due to high demand.
But we also saw how quickly you can gain hundreds of miles of driving range for just a few bucks.
It's going to charge this car fully at 35 minutes.
Or you may pay nothing at all for electricity.
It's actually free right now to charge in Wilmington.
Despite the average cost of an EV being $11,000 more than gas cars, all the electric vehicle owners we ran into said they won't go back to gas.
And I love it, love it, love it.
Oh, I love it.
They all also conceded more charging options are needed.
Do you think that the infrastructure is ready?
No. Close, but not yet.
Keely Arthur joining us now, getting us outside, a little field trip to the charging ports out here at WRAL. And I have some questions about charging. People concerned about power outages, or like we saw with Moore County and the power grid attack that had power out for days and days. Is that a legitimate concern for folks?
The good thing with the power outage is it's normally in a relatively small area, so you can always, if worse comes to worse, get the car towed to a place where there is a charging station. And also, these cars do have a really long range, 200 to 400 miles, and it's going to warn you way ahead of time before you're going to just stop on the road because of a dead battery.
Now, we know so many people are thinking it might be time to get an electric vehicle, and there have been some changes to the tax incentives, and they can be a bit confusing, like the one that's available now.
It's confusing. I know a lot of people have questions about this. The Treasury rolled out new guidance on April 18th about this. Essentially, it's a $7,500 tax credit for specific EVs. They have to meet certain criteria. But the big one that I want people to know right now is it's non-refundable. So if you owe on your taxes, it's going to help you. But if you don't owe, it's not a $7,500 gift.
Got it. All right, Keely Arthur, thank you so much. Good reporting this week.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And you can find Keely's reports, all of them, on WRAL.com. I recommend you check those out. I do want to mention one comment that Keely did share with me. A viewer named Mike H. wrote to her and said, please report the whole story. So let's do that. And I'm guessing here, Mike, that you're talking about something specific. You're wondering how much cleaner electric vehicles actually are. That's how they're sold to us, right? Well, it kind of depends on how you look at it. If you put an EV right next to a gas-guzzling car, yes, much cleaner. But the equation is a lot more complicated than that. See, North Carolina is pretty progressive when it comes to renewable, clean energy like solar and wind and hydro and that sort of thing. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2021, that's where we got about 15% of our energy, compared to coal, where we got 16% of our energy. So if you think of it that way, if we're burning coal to fill our batteries, it's definitely not clean. But we've been weaning off of coal by leaps and bounds over the past decade and will continue to do so, making us rely more and more on nuclear. In 2021, we got 33% of our electricity from nuclear power. And while nuclear doesn't cause dangerous emissions that warm the planet, Greenpeace points this out. It generates huge amounts of toxic waste, and no government has yet resolved how to safely manage this. Not to mention, the ideas that we currently have to manage it are extremely expensive. NBC reported in 2019 that costs jumped from $383 billion in 2017 to $493 billion in 2018. That's more than $100 billion in just 1 year. And keep this in mind. Most of this waste is highly radioactive and will remain so for thousands of years. Simply put, no one has a great plan for this yet. And that's just to charge the batteries. We haven't even talked about creating them. I'm joined now by WRAL 5 on your side producer Pritchard Strong. He worked on this series with Keely. And Pritch, these batteries are filled with expensive metals that do have to be mined. And before we get your feedback on that part of it, I do want to give people a little bit of background. You see, you can't make these batteries without lithium, a very important component. Now, there's an article from The Guardian. It states 95% of our lithium comes from Australia, Chile, China, and Argentina. Those are places where we can't regulate working conditions or environmental impact. And it also means that we're in the process of developing this critical infrastructure in the U.S. that relies almost entirely on other countries that we don't always agree with, like China. So there's been this new push to mine for these metals like lithium here in the U.S., including Gaston County, North Carolina. You covered all of this during your time in Charlotte. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so west of Charlotte, Piedmont Lithium is trying to open a lithium mine in Gaston County. It's a $1 billion project. This is to help with electric vehicle batteries. And basically, neighbors have pushed back on it. Some have been okay with it and sold their land. Others have really pushed back hard. And they have a couple of concerns. One is they don't want their environment, the area around them, destroyed. And they also are worried about their groundwater. They're concerned that this mining operation could contaminate the groundwater and cause problems for them in their well water. They've seen it happen before in Belmont, which is also in Gaston County. They had an issue a few years earlier where there was concerns about contamination from a nearby Duke coal ash plant. They were on bottled water for more than 1,000 days. They could not drink their tap water for that long. So they've seen it happen, and they don't want it to happen to them.
And during research I've done in other countries, looking what's happening in other countries, this type of mining for lithium can potentially cause a problem with groundwater.
And Piedmont Lithium has tried to assure neighbors that's not going to happen here, that there are better rules in place here. There won't be an issue, and if there is, they'll fix it. But that has not done enough to reassure neighbors.
All right, Pritch, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I do want to end this segment tonight with a quote from the director of the Institute for Responsible Mining. This was published in the New York Times. This is a person who vets mines for BMW and Ford Motor. She said, "Our new clean energy demands could be creating greater harm, even though its intention is to do good." Look, there's a lot more to discuss here. I know that. Let me know what you think. What are you discussing on the couch right now watching this segment? Email me at dan@wral.com. And listen, I'm not stating an opinion with this story. The fact is our planet is warming. We know this. Fossil fuels are a primary factor. This is scientific consensus. I'm only stating a real concern and some of the problems with one of our most aggressive solutions. So send me a message. Tell me what's on your mind, and we'll go in depth.